Okay.
Sorry.
I want to call the September 25th, 2019 Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting to order. Will everyone please stand for a salute to the flag? I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Notice of this meeting has been satisfied in accordance with Chapter 231 PL 1975 by advertising in the Home News Tribune, notifying the Sentinel Publishing Company and the Star Ledger, and also posting on the bulletin board and filing with the Borough Clerk. Roll call.
Mr. Green?
Here.
Mr. Henry?
Here.
Mr. Kaczynski?
Here.
Mr. Corrigan? Here. Mr. Savili?
Here.
Mr. Esposito?
Here.
Mr. Foley?
Here.
First application on the docket tonight will be 19-14, Amanda McIntyre. Please come forward, please.
Ms. McIntyre, how are you? I'm the board attorney. We just need to swear you in quickly. You swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You just speak up to the microphone, could you?
Yes, I do.
And you put your hand down. And give us your name, just spell your last name.
Amanda McIntyre, M-A-C, capital I-N-T-Y-R-E.
Okay, so this is kind of informal. Just explain to the board why you're here, what you're looking for.
Okay, we purchased a property, 78 North Edward Street, and we want to fence the backyard, but it's a corner property, so they said that it's considered a front side yard, and they wanted us to push in the fence 10 feet from the curb, and we want to go a foot in from the curb to include more of the yard. We have a toddler at home that we want to keep contained.
So the plan sheet we got apparently wasn't highlighted, so just describing it, it would be kind of coming off of the back of the house onto Charles Street, along Charles Street towards your neighbor's property?
Yes, there's a covered patio,
Okay.
so it would be on the outside of that, all the walkways would still be exposed. So it would come off of that, go to the curb, and to the back of the property
Okay,
around.
thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Sorry.
No, we have the plan, it just wasn't highlighted. They forgot to copy it in color.
Sorry.
Ma'am, that's a single-family home you live in.
Yes,
Okay, I was at your property today to look at it. That chain link fence that's there, is that yours?
no,
That's not yours.
no.
Okay, so it will start in front of that chain link fence.
Yes, along the back, the chain link, I believe, belongs to the property behind us.
Okay.
Yes.
And then we're looking at the house, where is it starting on the side yard?
Yeah, actually, board members, our zoning officer, Mr. Mashansky, has the color copy. He's going to show everybody. That one has the orange highlighter that shows it essentially coming off of where it says brick porch, heading in a easterly direction, then heading north to Charles, along Charles, and then surrounding the rest of what you would normally call a backyard.
Sorry about that.
That's all right, not your fault. If it was easy, we'd all be out of a job, so.
But you were barricading yourself here.
Oh, yeah, but we don't want a compound, we just want to keep the 3-year-old contained.
And what was the fence gonna be made out of, wood, PVC?
PVC,
6 foot white.
yes.
Any other questions?
I have a couple. You had indicated it's a foot off the curb?
The sidewalk, I'm sorry,
Okay. Yeah.
sorry.
Mr., let me just clarify. It's not going to be off the sidewalk, it's going to be a foot off your property line.
Right,
Yeah, your
yes.
property line is back from the sidewalk, so it's going to have to be a foot off the property line, not
Off
the
the property
sidewalk.
line.
So it's probably going to be maybe three feet approximately off the sidewalk.
Create any easement issues?
No, the fence is going to be on their property, so that's not
Depends
an
on the
issue.
property.
Yes.
Oh, I thought you said it was going to be a foot off their property line.
You had indicated it's going to be a foot off the fence. The fence is in the right-of-way. I'm sorry, the sidewalk is in the right-of-way. There's about 2 feet between the back of the sidewalk and their property line. And the fence is going to be a foot on their property. So there's about 3 feet off the sidewalk.
I see, okay.
So if you look at the plans that we have kind of running parallel to Charles Street, there's is a rather dark line, is like a long line, 2 dashes, a long line, 2 dashes. That's the actual property line that Jay's describing. And then set back closer to the house by 1 foot is where the fence will actually be placed. And that's just along Charles Street. How about the other sides of the fence? Will that be on the lot line or setback?
There's not an issue with the other property lines. That can be 6 inches off the property line. I'm not sure what the proposal is, but the variance is just for the Charles Street side, because technically it's a corner lot. That's, the house fronts on North Edwards, so it's half of what the front yard setback is, which is 10 feet. So 10 foot is required. They're proposing 1 foot from the property line.
And the site triangle is fine.
It said they're outside of the site triangle, so that's not an issue.
Any other questions?
One more. The property that's behind you, do they have a fence up that you would be aligning up with in any way, or no?
They have a porch or something, right, in the,
Behind us?
behind us.
They have a chain link fence there. It's a short chain link
If
fence.
I might, they have I think, a stockade, partially stockade and partially chain link fence. Let me ask you, there's a brick wall, a block wall along your back property
Yeah.
line? Is the
Yeah.
fence going on the house side of that or your neighbor's side of
The
that?
house side of that.
Okay, so there is about, looks like maybe a foot or so between the block wall and the property line. So their fence is gonna be probably, 1.5 feet, 2 feet off the neighbor's property.
Right.
So it's
I
not
was
gonna,
just curious if their neighbor had any fence along Charles Street that, when they put their fence up, would be in line with it, or if there's any fence there at all.
I have a photo, if you want
I think they have something set back.
Yeah, I have a photo, if you want to look at it, you'll see, if you look at the stockade fence in the photo, there's a setback probably about 10 feet or at least 10 feet back.
That's their house. Jay, is the wall there because of the elevation difference?
I believe it is, yeah.
So which is the higher property?
The neighbor behind them is higher.
Do you know about how much difference, the height of the wall?
It doesn't look like much of a wall. Just from a photo, it's not like a 5 or 6 foot high retaining wall. It might just be a couple foot.
Okay.
I think it's only about 2 feet.
Yeah, it looks small.
Yeah, God knows.
Thanks.
Any other questions? I have no further questions. I'm going to open this application up to the public. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak in regards to this application? Anyone from the public wish to speak on this application? Make a motion that the public portion of this application be closed. What's the pleasure of the board?
Chairman, make a motion that we approve the application?
I have a motion and a second to approve the application. Roll call.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Henry?
Yes.
Mr. Kaczynski?
Yes?
Mr. Corrigan? Yes. Mr. Esposito?
Yes.
Mr. Savili?
Yes.
Mr. Foley?
Yes.
Okay, your application's been approved. We will memorialize it at our next meeting. You do not have to be here, and then afterwards you can put up your fence.
Thank you very much.
I see. Okay, the next application is 19-10. Edward, I hope I'm pronouncing it right. Condarachi,
Condarachi, that's right.
16 John Street.
Yes, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Conrad. Same as before, just need to swear you in, sir. You swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And just give us your name, spell your last name for the record.
Edward Condarachi, C-O-N-D-I-R-A-C-C-I.
Thank you, Mr. Conrad. And same with the last applicant, just explain to the board what you're looking to do and what relief you need from the board.
Sure. I own lots 50 and 51 on Block 1, that's on John Street. They are slightly undersized to build a house on. The two lots together are 50 feet by 115 feet. And I'm looking to basically put a single-family home on that house. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths.
Mr. Chairman, let me maybe help the board with some background. This property is located in the Old Bridge section of the borough. If you recall Hurricane Sandy, we had flooding in that area. The state came in and bought, I'd say probably the majority of the homes in the area, knocked down the houses, and it's state property. The applicant has title to approximately a 50 by 100 lot that did not have a house on it, but it was not purchased by the state. So he has a kind of an out parcel that's there. There are still some houses in the area, but the majority have been demolished because of the past flooding. His proposal is to go through and build a new house on that lot and raise it above the flood elevation. So he's gonna go through and comply with the current flood elevation. Because he's in a flood hazard area, he is gonna have to get permits from the state. So if you do act favorably on the application, that would recommend it by our office to be a condition, that he's gotta get the necessary permits and provide those to the building department before he can get a building permit.
Is it my understanding, reading this, that you're going to elevate this to 20 feet?
Yes, the first floor elevation is roughly 20 feet. The elevation at the curb is just over 10 feet. If there were a curb there, there is no curb there. So the first floor elevation is 10 feet above that.
10 feet.
Yeah, well, 10 feet above the curb, which is 10 feet above sea level.
And then according to your architectural plans, the overall height from grade to the peak of the roof will be 35 feet.
I believe that's accurate.
Yeah, which will comply with, because that's a concern, we don't make sure you don't need a height variance. You're right at the 35 feet, which is permitted. Just wanted to make sure that that's the case. And then, board members, and there was proof submitted, when you have an undersized lot, which that's this case, the law says, which seems kind of futile, but you have to go through the process, that you need to ask the neighboring property if they would be willing to sell you some of their property to either get rid of your variance or to lessen the degree of the variance. And then you have to also offer that property, saying, well, if you're not willing to give me some of your property, were you willing to buy mine? And the law says you have to do that to show the hardship of having an undersized lot. And the applicant has in his application done those two things. So that particular element of his requirements for his proofs have been met. And just so you know, the neighboring property is the state, so the state's not gonna sell him the property, and they're certainly not interested in buying his, no offense. But that's just what the law says, you gotta go through those steps before the board can act on the application. So he has checked those two boxes off.
So this property, there's empty lots in both sides
Yes,
that the state owns?
yes, state owns lots on either side.
So these are properties that can't be built on in the future anyway, is that correct?
I believe that's accurate, yes.
That's correct, yeah.
This is John Street, so we're on Bordentown
It's off of Bordentown.
Off of board.
before you get into 18?
Correct, yeah. Where before you get to the VFW, where the Mintech Quigley plant used to be, right past there is Charles Street's the entrance to, I'm sorry, William Street's the entrance to the area. John is the first street. But it's that little development. If you like, I have a photo of what it looks like. Where the fence is in this photo, that's this applicant's lot, so you can see what it looks like now. But there used to be a house right adjacent. I think the house was a 100-foot lot.
Yes,
50-foot had the lien, which you purchased, so the state purchased 50 with the house, demolished the house, and you were able to go through and get title to that remaining 50 feet.
exactly, that's exactly right.
Jay, was there a reason Blue Acres didn't buy this lot?
I don't know that, other than maybe there was a lien, that appeared that there was some tax lien, that's how you got involved with it?
At the time that Blue Acres was buying property, I didn't own it, I just had the lien on it. And then when Blue Acres bought it, somehow they separated it from the mortgage. My piece of land was actually part of the mortgage for the main house. Somehow it was separated, and they just bought the house, and they left the vacant land.
And Blue Acres won't buy it from you?
No, that's my understanding. My attorney was on the phone with them again this week. They're not interested in, A, they're not interested in buying vacant land. B, they seem to be done buying in Sayreville is what he was told this week. And then C, even if they would buy it, the property, they buy at fair market value. The property has no marketable value without this variance. That's my opinion, frankly, but I think it's true.
And there also are restrictions on the property that was purchased that can't be developed. It is basically purchased for open space purposes, so he can't buy the adjacent property back and make the lot bigger to conform because of those restrictions.
And your intention is not to live there, you're going to build a house and then you're going to attempt to sell it,
I
correct?
am gonna sell it, yes, sir.
What exactly are the variances?
Mr. Chairman, there's three variances. Two are based on the size of the lot. It's an R7 zone, it's supposed to have a 75-foot frontage. He has a 50-foot frontage. And it's also supposed to be a 7,500 square foot lot area. He's got 5,750. So those are basically pre-existing based on the lot size. The other variance is lot coverage based on the size of the house that he's building. 20% is required by the ordinance. He's proposing 22, so it's slightly over the 20% requirement.
Yeah, but those things are kind of meaningless when you have two vacant lots next to
That'll never be built. Yeah, you got a point, and it's actually a good point we're kind of joking about, is that's part of the board's analysis for any application, is look at what's proposed, look what the surrounding areas are, how they are developed and can be developed, and what's the impact of the variances. And as you're noting, chances of there being an impact is probably just on the groundhogs.
And also another constraint is there's an existing sanitary sewer line. This area used to be served by septic system in the 80s. The borough installed sanitary sewers and the people abandoned their septic systems. But right across this entire lot from Charles heading to Bordentown, there's a 15-foot wide easement. So of his 50-foot width, he's got an easement on 15 feet that he can't build on, so he's left with that remaining area, which is why the house he's proposing is instead of being a square house, it's a rectangle because of the shape of the lot and the constraints that he's got.
Any other questions from the board?
Is there any other houses on John Street?
Yes, there are a few houses. There are three immediately to the west going towards the marina. Those folks are staying. Just about everyone else took the buyout.
And that's it, on that street?
I think there's one other house still across the street.
Any other questions?
Let me just qualify. So if the board were to grant your application, obviously there's the variances, and that you would limit the house to as shown on the architectural plans. That would be acceptable?
Yes, that'd be great.
And the reason I clarify that, board members, it's weird in, I don't know, in your businesses, but mine, I see you deal with issues and I don't see them for 5-6 years. And starting to see underside lots again. I don't know why they're popping up. The reason why I asked if he's okay with that condition is what you often see is time goes by, and the question is, well, what was approved, and did the board have any conditions on it? So that's why I did ask the question about the height, because he's bumping up against the 35 feet, which is completely allowed. But all of a sudden, 2 years later comes by, and the resolution isn't clear on it, and somebody says, well, you know, did they approve that height? Because it's got that big 10-story, 10-foot first floor. Did they approve the impervious coverage? What was the board's intention on improving this undersized lot and a house on it? So I just want to make it very clear. It makes things, once we adopt the resolutions out of our hands, makes Andy's life easier, makes Mr. Kondraki's life easier, and anyone who should own the property in the future. That's why I'd like to make sure Mr. Kondraki understands what I'm asking him, and the board understands too. So apologize for going off a little bit on that, but it makes life easier in the future once it's out of our hands.
One other item is that because this isn't a flood area, he's going to have to build a house a certain way. The way, if you look at the architectural drawing, that garage, it's going to be below the first floor, so the potential is that garage area could flood if we ever have a problem again. So he's going to have to construct it to allow water to basically flow through that. There's certain construction parameters when you build in a flood zone. That would be enforced by your borough construction office, and I'm sure your architect would be aware of that. But in addition to getting state permits to allow him to build there, he's going to have to build it a certain way because it isn't a flood zone.
So that's not just an insurance thing, there's actual
State
guidelines
requirements.
that say, hey, you're here, you need to build that.
Correct. The flood waters, as they come up, could knock your foundation down. So if you have the ability of the water to flow through it, there's certain things you can go through and do to allow that. So even though he's got a garage that's at grade, the potential is that could flood. Your first floor is not going to flood because that'll be by 5 foot above the flood elevation, but the potential for that garage having a problem in the future is there.
Another thing is you see down the shore, I live down the shore, is post-Sandy, certain of your house equipment has to be above the flood zone too. So you'll see some of these rebuilt houses, and there's almost like a little miniature deck with the air conditioning unit on it. That's 10 feet off the ground. because that needs to be above the flood water. They want the water boiler, so if the gas pilot gets knocked out, there's not gas leaking. So there's, as Jay's saying, there's a whole bunch of state regulations that the building department will make sure are complied with, and that's why Jay and I are asking all these crazy little questions that we normally don't ask about houses because of those flood regulations, and Mr. Koldrack is certainly well aware of them. He's got a good architect and engineer and attorney on his team, so I'm sure he's aware of it.
One last question. Now, you plan on keeping this as a one-family home and not a two-family home, is that correct?
It's a single-family home. It will stay that way.
Any other questions? I'm going to open it to the public. Anyone from the public wish to speak on this application, 16 John Street in the Old Bridge section of Serval? Anyone wish to speak in regards to this application? I have a motion to close. Public is closed. The board's pleasure concerning this application.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the application be approved as presented.
Second. With the conditions agreed upon?
Yes.
Thank you. Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve this application with the conditions noted. Roll call.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Henry?
Yes.
Mr. Kaczynski?
Yes.
Mr. Corrigan?
Yes.
Mr. Savili? Mr. Esposito? Mr. Foley?
Okay, your application's been approved. We'll memorialize it at our next meeting.
And also, Mr. Condrey, I understand that a request was made of you a few meetings ago to be put off to tonight because we had a busy agenda, and you were polite enough to agree to that. So we, on behalf of the board and the staff, we want to thank you for that. It was very kind of you. I know you probably want to get moving on this house, so we'll make sure next month your resolution will be adopted. You don't need to be here, certainly welcome to be, and then you can go to the building department, start getting your permits, or do whatever you're going to do from this point forward.
Excellent, thank you.
You're welcome, Ms. Kondrack. Have a good night.
Okay, the third and last application is 19-13. Marco Castro, 40 North Edward Street.
Good evening, Mr. Castro. Just like the other folks need to swear you in, you swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
You can put your hand down. Just give us your name, spell your last name.
Marco Castro, Castro.
Thank you. And just as before, tell the board what you want to do with your house and what relief you need from the board.
Well, it's not what I want to do, it's what I did. So, it's already been done, and I'm just here to know what the next step is for me now that I have done it without permits or approval. So, I'm just here because I had this gentleman here, and he come by my house and take a look at everything, and he drew up on the plans there what it was done and what I have to go through now to keep it.
Mr. Castro,
Yes.
when did you do this work?
It was just recently because my mom, she was very sick, and she had no place to live, so she asked if she can come live with me, and I said, okay, and she had a lot of furniture and stuff to bring to my house, and I had no room in my house to bring her furniture, so I was going to place in the basement, and I had no way to get into the basement because of the doorway, so I did what I had to do, and now this is what I'm at, what I'm up against.
Well, with all due respect,
Yes, sir.
I understand what you just told me, but how does that explain a carport and
Well, the carport
blacktop
was
driveway?
The carport was there for some time now. I mean, as far as the stairs and stuff like that, that's all new stuff there.
What about the blacktop in the backyard? How long has
was
that been
there for a
there?
while. That's been there.
What's a
for
while?
About 5 years, I say. Yeah.
So this has been done a long time ago.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, why don't, since we do have the benefit of having our zoning officer here who went out, maybe we could have Mr. Mashansky explain what items on the property did not have the appropriate permits and when it was done, if he knows, that might help us frame what we need to address. Andy, would you willing to do that for us? Sure. Thank you. And Andy, as always, you're still under oath, Mr. Mashansky.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Andy Mashansky, zoning officer. He has not gotten permits. We don't have on record any of these permits. That's not to say that there was no permits for the garage. I believe that's just been that's predates our collection of files, but nevertheless, I have to believe that Mr. Castro here has had these installations from concrete to pavers to the blacktop to the carport, the deck for some time. Maybe the deck and the small addition was within the last 5 years. It seems like Mr. Castro, who's been the owner here for 20 years, has slowly evolved into this sprawl of concrete and asphalt. It has come to my attention that there was a complaint and that there has been an absence of permitting. And so therefore, my office is addressing that he comply, and further on that, he needs to comply legally, and therefore it requires a stop at the zoning board for a variance in order for them to be approved. Now, it's up to the board to render a decision whether to accept what he is now proposing as really as an as-is existing condition, or to not approve it, and therefore Mr. Castro would have to eliminate or truncate, reduce, diminish some of these violations. So he's here to reach compliance, and that's why he's here, so.
So, and if I can just summarize, the garage, as you're saying, looks to be rather old and may have had permits, just the records don't go back that far.
That's correct, yes.
So the newer stuff that you don't find permits for is the concrete area on the yard?
Yeah, I would say it's the concrete area, the impervious coverage.
So all impervious, because I want to break it down, it looks like we have concrete, blacktop, and pavers.
That's correct, and there's a small addition, he mentioned why he put that in to cover his stairwell. Nevertheless, it's considered an addition.
Yeah, Andy, I don't mean to interrupt you, I just want to try and break it down. So are we talking about all the concrete, the driveway from the street all the way up to the garage, or just a portion of the concrete may not have?
I can't qualify that, but it does look like that the concrete was done in the same time period.
Right.
So that, it's safe to say that that's probably been there as an existing condition for quite some time. And then the pavers is probably within the last 20 years on his own doing, or at least you could say that this was his sprawl of impervious coverage.
Okay, how about
As well as the blacktop.
the blacktop surrounding the garage?
Let me just, getting back to the concrete,
sorry.
I just want to, this survey that was submitted is dated 2003, and it's showing the concrete from Edward Street all the way to the garage. So I would say, based on the survey, it looks like that concrete portion has been there since at least 2003, since it's shown on the survey.
That's correct, that's what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
yeah, everything else,
Was,
I think may have been misinterpreted that. I think, Andy, that's what you were saying, the concrete was part of the garage,
correct.
but I don't know if that was interpreted that way,
No,
so.
no, good point, Jeff.
The garage and the carport.
I think that the carport was built over the existing concrete,
It's just.
Okay, so the concrete was, and the garage were probably there in 2003.
at least 2003,
So
correct.
Mr. Castro probably knew that. So the pavers are probably new, and the blacktop around the garage is new.
That's correct.
Then we'll get to, the carport is relatively new as well. That's about 20 by 10 by 12, 13 feet high. The deck, which is about 16 by 14, that's also in the last 20 years. Do you have any idea about how old that is, Andy?
Actually, I don't think that deck is actually, it doesn't have a permit on record, but I don't think that was a violation.
Can you explain that?
I don't think there's a setback issue there or a lot coverage issue relative to the deck.
She gets the setback.
Okay, so the deck doesn't need any approvals.
Correct.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. And then let's talk about the extension, the 13 by 16 extension. Any estimation about how old that is?
What's that, the stairs?
Yes.
That's, a year and a half.
Okay. And what variances are needed just for the addition, Andy?
It's a setback issue there.
It's the side yard
And
setback?
also lot coverage, that goes along with the lot coverage variance.
Okay.
If you look at the existing house and the existing garage, in this zone, 20% lot coverage is what's permitted. With what was there, if we assume that that was there back in 2003, the coverage was still in a 26 range. So he was above the coverage already with the existing house and the garage before the carport and the addition, which are now adding to that variance.
Gotcha. Thank you for clarifying. Okay, I just wanted to get that on the record, Mr. Chairman. I apologize, I knew you had a question.
Now, you purchased this home in '03? Is that when you
Excuse me,
purchased the home?
Yes, I think, it was '03, it's gonna be 17 years
Okay.
tomorrow.
I just have a couple other questions, if I
Yes,
could.
sir.
The pavers and the blacktop, who put that down? Was it professionals or yourself, or?
I had my friends help me out, and then I had some guy that does pavers to lay them for me, so. we
I
did
just
the
want usually
labor.
professionals know that they need permits to do different jobs.
Yeah, it was not a professional outfit that did it. It was just a guy that did pavers for somebody else, and he did it for me, you know, just knowing somebody.
Right.
And he laid the pavers, because I don't know how to lay pavers correctly, so, but we did the labor for it.
Mr. Castro, did you
Yes.
know that you had to get permits?
No, I did not, sir. I had no clue that pavers required a permit.
I'm reading the report from the zoning office. You're looking for 9 variances here, which is a lot of variances.
I understand,
There's a lot of violations here.
okay?
Let me just clarify one. Who did the extension, I guess you're talking about, over the steps?
The steps, some guy that does a lot of work in the neighborhood, he did the steps for me, you know? And as far as the extension on top, my friend did it for me. He built that for me.
I have another question.
Yes, sir.
I was there yesterday,
Yes.
and you had a boat there,
Right, that's,
a boat in the driveway.
yes.
Today, when I went past there, the boat was gone. Where's the boat at now?
It's in my house again. We were using it today.
I see, okay.
Your carport, is that a permanent structure, or is it one of those
No,
aluminum ones?
It's bolted to the ground. That's, yeah, it can just unbolt it and, you know, it's just fastened, but it's not a permanent.
Is it wood or metal?
It's
One of those
metal, it's metal.
One of those
yeah.
metal ones?
Yeah, it's a metal one.
With a canvas top to it.
But I think because it has a roof, it's considered a structure, so that's why it's factored in as being part of the lot coverage area.
That's what I was wondering.
You have no problem taking that down?
No,
Okay,
if I have to, no.
if I could, what about the impervious part of this? I mean, he's got neighbors here and it rains, there's only one way for the water to go.
I don't know what the topography is in the back of his house. If you look at the photo that I have, the house is higher than Edward Street, so the front yard drains out toward Edward Street. I don't know if the backyard drains down his driveway.
Everything drains right into the driveway, straight down, the way it's always done. The pavers are not sealed, the water does not sit anywhere in my yard. When it rains heavy, I never have water issues, there's never have water overflow on anybody's property. It just goes straight down the driveway into the streets, never had a problem.
Even from the blacktop?
Yeah, nothing. I mean, it's got a good flow on everything.
So it's.
Everything's
you
pitched.
Go up the hill into your driveway, there's still a pitch.
Yeah,
going
everything-
To the back,
Yes,
behind the
sir.
garage.
Yes, sir. Everything is pitched. If you go in a heavy rain, you'll see everything going down into the driveway and just keeps going right down the driveway out into the street. It's just the way it's been ever since I've been living there. It's the same, I mean, everything's the same except it's got pavers and nothing's sealed. So when it does have water, it goes right down into the pavers. There's nothing, the pavers are not creating any puddles or anything. So it's not really, I didn't think that it would harm anything. I know I've seen people where they seal their driveways and their pavers. It's not sealed. Everything is free flowing.
Mr. Mashansky, I have a question. When you got involved in this issue and went to there, have you gotten any complaints in reference to the drainage problem there?
I have gotten no complaints prior to or afterwards or during. I have gotten no complaints about drainage issues.
Okay, thank you.
Another question, if I could. When you take out a permit, maybe it's good for you, Andrew, possibly. When you take out a permit, if you're gonna build a deck or this extension, I'm not sure what this extension is. Is it just another part of the deck that just comes out a little bit? Or is this something that's bigger that?
This is basically, it's a small addition. He put in, there's a stairwell that goes into his basement. He decided to put a structure over that as a shelter area. So really, it's almost like a mudroom that leads into a basement area.
So was there a Bilko door there before?
Possibly, he may
The basement door, yeah, was back there, and I just.
You built a building
Steps,
over
right.
over that?
Yeah,
And the stairway was always there?
it wasn't that big, I made it bigger, so it'd be easier to go down. Before it was those real steep steps going down.
So therefore, it's viewed as an addition, and therefore he needs a building permit and of course a variance because it's part of the structure.
Let me ask you too, if I could, Andrew, when you take out a permit for these kinds of projects, what do you actually do in the process of this being built? Or I don't know if you're responsible, do you take a look at that it's done properly?
The building department does do a final inspection to make sure it's in compliance to the building code.
Now, that's what I'm getting at, I guess. They haven't done that for this project at all.
That's correct, because he's never obtained a permit for them.
So I don't know how this can work. Can we require our inspector to look at this before we approve anything? To make sure it's done properly and it's
Well,
not?
he would have to file for a permit granted first, however, he would need to get an approval from the board because there's a setback violation and a lot coverage issue. If the board does approve it, he's going to be directed to get a building permit, granted that it's already there and it's in existence. There, he will still have to submit plans as if it was not there. The building department will review those plans in order to put on record and correct maybe if something needs to be added to it. There will be a physical inspection done on what's already built.
And if for some reason it's not done correctly, you could have him get it replaced
Or corrected.
or corrected or
Assist- yeah.
whatever.
See, the big problem is that the first step in the building permit process is a zoning permit.
Right.
So if the resident came in, he would have come in with this plan saying, I want to do all these things, and Andy would have reviewed it and said that these are all problems. That didn't happen, he just went and built it. So now, in order to issue a building permit without a variance, you need to get the variances resolved first, and then you can go through and get the construction issues. He can follow up with permit, make sure things were built properly.
And everything will be made sure that it's, like you said, built properly and
Right, if, for
corrected.
some reason, if you don't grant the variance, there's no need for the building department to inspect and make sure it's built properly. That's.
Andy, while you're up there, there's, if you're looking at this, there's some pencil marks to the left of the deck. Are they stairs, or there's like a little jut out? Right next to where it says 0.5 feet over?
5 feet over.
Yeah, right next to the deck, if
Is
you're,
this the house? Yeah, yes, the steps.
there are steps.
Steps,
Yes.
okay, to the deck.
Yes.
I think there's also stairs off the back of the deck onto
Yeah,
the
the
pavers.
steps off the back, yes, in the middle.
Right.
And how high is the deck off the,
It's low, it's, probably 4 feet, maybe. So it's a low deck. Maybe less than that.
One other question too, when you're talking about the reasons that you did this, your mother moved in with you, and I didn't think you finished your statement as to why you're talking about furniture, as to why you did things. Is it because?
Well, there was no way to get the furniture through my house that she had. Everything through the stairs in my house it just wasn't making it to turn. So I told her I had to do something with steps. And she's very sick, my mother, and I needed it done right away. So my friend said he can do it for me, help me out, and that's how it all happened.
So you enlarged the steps as well? Is that
Yeah,
what you're saying?
we made them big enough to get stuff down there.
They're
And then I
much
said I want
smaller,
to
is that
close
what-
it so that if it does rain, it doesn't go into the basement or, cause all kinds of mess. So that's why I enclosed it.
And those original steps were much smaller?
Oh, yeah, sure, they were like Bilko door type steps and very steep.
Okay, but the furniture, putting the furniture in the basement really had nothing to do with the carport or putting the blacktop
The
down.
carport I did for my boat. because, you know, every year I gotta shrink wrap it and every that, so I did it because I wanted a covering for my boat. I used to get those cheapy ones, and those things were always blowing away. You know, those cheaper pipe with the canvas tops or whatever they are, they would always get ripped away with a heavy storm. This here, this is windproof for up to 200-mile winds and stuff. This thing won't go anywhere. You know, I spend money just to cover it, to keep it, you know, the boat from being shrink wrapped every year.
And I want to open this up to the public. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak in reference to this application? Anyone from the public wish to speak in regards to this application? Make a motion that the public portion be closed. Mr. Castro, you have 9 variances here.
Yes, sir.
And my recommendation is we cannot give you 9 variances here.
Okay.
There's going to have to be some modifications here in order to bring you into the borough ordinances and the codes that we have.
Understand?
One of my recommendations is that will satisfy part of this application is that you remove the carport. That's number 1. And looking at these, if you were to remove the pavers, we're removing another variance, number 4 in particular. And by removing the carport, you're also going to remove variances 7 and 8 on the sheet.
So on the pavers, if he cut 4 feet out of them, right? Or he doesn't have to remove them all, does he? He needs like 4 more feet, or no? Okay.
For setback,
Can you explain that?
For setbacks.
not coverage, but setback.
Yeah, that would cover the number 4.
The pavers and the blacktop create variances not only for the side yard setback, but for impervious coverage. So
Okay, what are the figures on the impervious coverage?
he's at about 78%, and it's supposed to be 45, so.
And I don't know if you did the calculation, but if he removed all the pavers, what would it bring it down?
I didn't
do that.
do the calculations, but you're correct. If you cut it 4 feet, that gets rid of the side yard setback variance. So that would knock a couple variances off. If you make it have a 5-foot setback, you're still gonna be over with impervious coverage. You're gonna be less than a 78%, but it'll get rid of the side yard setback issue that you have, if that's a concern the board has.
As Jay's noting, the ordinance requires that any impervious surface, the pavers, the blacktop, can't go all the way to the property line, it has to be set back. So by imposing requirement to comply with that in regard to the pavers and the blacktop, it would reduce the impervious coverage on the property. And make it compliant, remove, I think, 4 variances in that alone. It wouldn't remove the impervious, but it would remove variance that's listed on Andy's refusal permit letter would be variances number 4, 5.
7 and 8.
It would reduce.
No, 6 and 9.
And it would reduce the impervious.
Correct.
Reduce it, right.
It's definitely, probably,
Sorry, I misspoke, Joan. 4, 5, 6, and 9 are the variances called out that relate to the blacktop and/or impervious, blacktop or pavers not meeting the setback requirement.
the existing property with the structures and the concrete was probably close to what's allowed by ordinance. So I think coverage-wise, you'd have to eliminate everything to get rid of variances, but you'd be able to reduce the number required if you weren't as concerned about coverage and you were concerned about the setbacks. That allows you to knock off some of the variances that are proposed.
I have one more question here. In the back of the property, it says there's a concrete wall there?
Concrete wall, yes, to separate the guy from
Is that-
Pulaski.
Garage, yeah.
Now, how high is that wall?
That wall's probably 1.5 feet. Just got to step down. He's got his fence there, and then the wall was there. That was built there from the guy that built the
I
property.
just want to get a feel
Yeah, I
for,
think it's like probably 1 foot, 2 feet, maybe the most.
And which,
I know it goes down.
whose property is higher, yours or
Mine is.
yours is
Yeah,
higher?
So that wall is yours?
Yes.
Is it just along the back, or does it come up the sides as well?
Comes along the back, and then if you're looking at the front, the back of the house, down the left side, all the way down the left side, to separate the left side,
Yeah, it's noted on the drawing, wall.
yeah. Because my house is, the house next to me is dead down probably 2-3 feet down. Their property's low.
Which side?
On, if you're looking at the front of the house, on the right side,
On the right side?
yeah,
Okay.
theirs is down lower.
That's why you have the wall there.
Yeah. Yeah, because my house is set up high.
And the home that's to your right, looking at the front of your house, there's no wall along their property
On the
line?
right or the left?
If you're looking at your
front.
house, be to the right.
Looking at the front of my house, the left side has no wall, the right side has the wall.
So this way I'm looking at here, this side has a wall up along the side?
I can't see how,
Oh, okay.
where's the front of the house?
This is the front of the house here, down here. If
Yeah,
you're
so
looking
the
at
left
house-
side, the left doesn't have a wall, the right side does. They're down low, the right side is the same height as mine.
I got the
Yeah,
other.
they're the same.
How far up the side of the property line does the wall go?
The wall.
whole way?
No, my front yard, where my house starts is where that block wall starts.
Okay,
All the way to the back and then around.
I see it now in the. And that's about 1.5 feet, 2 feet high.
Yeah, they're not on the side. On the side is probably 3 feet maybe, I would say. It starts off low, you know, like at a shallow, and then it gets higher as it goes back, because their yard is down. And everything from that wall goes towards my driveway, is pitched towards my driveway. That's the way the guy built the house, because everything, since I got it, even the driveway was not even flat, it was always like in a U type, like, to give it like a channel for the water to run down the driveway.
All around the garage.
Because the problem I was having was the garage never had, gutters, and the water, the runoff, kept eating at the garage, and it was making it start to lean, sort of. It just so, I wanted to stop that water from going into the ground constantly. And it actually, you know, made it better. So, it just, with the garage, the guy was ready to separate at one time.
Is the garage structurally sound?
Yeah, yes, it's strong. It's strong, but I didn't want it to keep eating away at the water kept going down and behind the garage, and you'll see like there's a crack in the wall there, and I stopped that, you know, I put some blacktop so the water would just have a way to just take off instead of keep digging into the ground.
Why not gutters?
Huh?
Why not gutters?
I wanted to gutter it, but I just wanted to be able to keep it clean too, because the weeds grow like crazy back there. Like crazy. I mean, the guy behind me, they're all his weeds. And they come from his property over the wall, into my yard, up my garage. I just ripped out a bunch of it this past week, because it just grows like wildfire over there. So, just trying to keep it where it's less work for me to do when I come home. That's it.
Chairman, just one other, to Jay, because there was some discussion about this. Are the pavers considered impervious coverage?
Typically, they are. You may have some separation, it might go through and reduce a little bit of runoff, but in most cases, you consider it as impervious.
So no matter which applicant came before us, they would be considered impervious? Okay, thank you.
Mr. Castro,
Yes, sir.
as I said earlier, there's 9 variances here, and we cannot grant 9 variances. There's going to have to be some modifications to this application.
Okay.
My recommendation is that the pavers and the blacktop be removed 5 foot off the property line.
5 feet?
Yes.
That's,
And that would therefore be in compliance with our borough
Why
ordinance.
don't I just rip it all up?
Well, if you want to do that too,
'Cause,
that's,
I mean,
that's
5
not,
feet is just gonna leave a big gap and look ridiculous. You know what I mean?
that's entirely up to you if you want to do that, but you have to be in compliance here.
I understand.
And also, the carport has to go.
Okay, no problem.
Is that a motion, Mr. Chairman?
I'm going to make it a
I don't get
motion,
why the carport should have to go to. I see carports all over this town.
because it's not in compliance with the ordinance in any way, shape, or form. It's too close to the property line.
He's making it a structure. So it's almost the same as adding addition onto your house, right?
Correct.
Yep. I mean, if you want to take all the blacktop out and all the pavers out, that's up to you. Our recommendation is, in order to be in compliance with our ordinance, that you only have to do 5 feet on the entire thing. That eliminates our variances here,
Okay,
and the carport also. Now, we're not touching the deck
okay,
or the addition. We can leave that alone.
okay.
So it's give and take here.
I'll take those pavers out. I'll do the 5 feet all around. I'll do what you want. I'll take the carport. Anybody want to buy a carport? Pay $2,500 for it. So, no problem. I'll get rid of it.
All right, I'm going to make a motion that this application be approved with the following conditions: that the pavers and the blacktop be removed 5 foot off the property line, and the carport be removed, and the construction office will check and verify that this has been done, and then we'll be in compliance with 4, 5, 6, and 9 on the ordinances, the variances. And 7 and 8 as well, because that's the carport.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, could I get some clarification here? You're talking about 5 feet off. I can see the pavers from the property line, but when we talk about the blacktop, it doesn't even seem like there's 5 feet on the one side and on the back. I'm not sure. But are you suggesting that most of the blacktop comes off on the back and, in this case, the left side of the garage?
No, the right side.
Oh, you're talking 5 feet off the property line. I mean, it only looks like there's 3 feet there.
Yes, so in those areas, it would be, I guess, back to the garage, 5 feet or the structure. I guess we should
There's not
word that
even 5
condition.
feet back
Yeah,
there.
there's approximately 3.5 feet between the property line and the garage on the left side and the rear, so I think what you're recommending is that all that blacktop be removed right to the garage, so there'd be no blacktop between the property line and the garage on the left side and in back. On the right side, some of that blacktop can stay, but it's got to be 5 feet off that right property line.
Correct.
He has to do the left side also?
The left side between the
3.5
garage,
feet.
yeah, there's only 3.5 feet, so he'll remove the pavement up to the garage foundation on the left side of the property that's facing lot 289 on the plan. And then the rear, which faces lot 161, behind the garage, will be up to the garage. The remainder of the rear will be 5 feet. And then the right side, which is adjoining block 287, for the blacktop will be 5 foot setback, and the pavers will be 5 foot setback.
I just have, personally here, I just have a little concern about what we're asking them to do. I don't know if this is proper or not. If we could ask them to come back with pictures of these things so we could have a better feel for what we're talking about?
That's up to the board. You don't have to act on it.
If Jay says no, I'm perfectly fine with it, but if Jay could possibly sketch what we're talking about, or, you're not comfortable with that, Jay?
Sure. You want me to mark up his survey to reflect what the proposed conditions are? Is that what you're asking?
What we're
That's Bill.
asking, yeah, what he needs to remove, if you're okay with that?
Well, I understand what needs to be removed, but I'm a little concerned that maybe leaving some of this stuff here might not be all that bad, especially the side here in the back of the garage, the blacktop. There's walls here, I don't know where the walls are and how that applies to maybe, kind of issues that we have.
Then we need to change the resolution for that.
Well, no, I think what Mr. Henry is suggesting is that we don't act on the application tonight. We continue the application, have the applicant submit pictures of what the backyard looks like, basically from the house back to the property, so we can see, where the deck is, where the extension is, the carport, how the pavers adjoin the neighbor's property, how the blacktop is around the garage and adjoining the neighbor's property. That's what you're talking about?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, so
Pavers don't even
so
touch
his
the neighbor's
proposals don't
property.
act tonight. Let's get more information in the form of photos of the property before we act, and we can carry this to next month.
The pavers don't even come against the foundation wall. There's like maybe 10 inches that were never completed, that is just dirt right there. So it's not even against the property. So there's dirt runoff right there. It's not even there. So another couple feet.
No, what I want
over.
to see is like, we're asking you now to take out basically all the blacktop, except for a couple feet on the right-hand side of the garage.
So leave the
part
back
is-
and the other side? you
No,
say?
that would be coming out too, and in the back of the
Oh, the
garage
back
would be coming
too?
out.
Yeah, 'cause
Yes,
it's only
that's why I'm
like, it
suggesting
only got
that,
like 12 inches.
that's why I'm suggesting if we could see pictures to see what it looks like, to see if there's an issues or problems with it, we might still consider that. But my own personal opinion is that we would allow you to leave it,
Okay.
personally. But it seems as if, for me to make an informed decision, that I would have to see pictures of what we're actually talking about.
Okay.
Because right now, they're suggesting that you take out basically all the blacktop, 5 feet of the pavers, and take down the carport. So if we have a better picture of what it looks like, how it might affect your neighbors, maybe how the neighbors' backyards affecting your garages, you had indicated that you're taking down weeds and things like that. I just want to have a better picture. Here, it seems like a lot of tightness and everything's filled in, and I can kind of agree with what we're saying too about taking the 5 feet off the one side and
I mean,
taking the
I don't
blacktop.
mind, I'll take that blacktop out. I don't need the blacktop. If you want me to take it out, I'll take it out. Doesn't bother me. I mean, I'll bring it right back to dirt or whatever was there. I'll just leave it as is. And as far as the pavers, you want me to cut 5 feet off? I'll cut the 5 feet off. Whatever the satisfied is, to complete it, to finalize it, I'll be fine with it. I don't, carport, blacktop, 5 feet, I'll do it. No problem.
Why, no, I just,
Because,
give it a chance.
no, I'm just saying, the blacktop, it's nothing there. The blacktop, there's nothing behind the garage. It's a very small piece. And the other side of the garage, where it's not as wide, very small walkway, that's all it is, very tight. There's nothing there.
And you have no problem taking that small piece of blacktop out of there and those pavers out of there?
No, I won't, I have no problem, I'll take it out.
Okay, then we'll do it tonight.
This way, it's all done. Yeah.
We'll vote on this tonight,
Okay.
and
So I guess, Mr. Chairman, based upon that conversation, your motion still stands to remove the blacktop and pavers to the 5 feet or the garage foundation, whichever is greater, and to remove the carport. And that was your motion. So do we have a second?
I have a second? I got a motion and a second. Roll call.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Henry?
Yes.
Mr. Kaczynski?
Yes.
Mr. Corrigan? Yes. Mr. Esposito?
Yes.
Mr. Savili?
Yes.
Mr. Foley?
Yes.
Okay, you heard the motion and the result of this application, and you will proceed to remove the pavers and the blacktop and the carport. And Mr. Mashansky will check periodically on progress of taking care of the situation.
Okay.
And we'll proceed from there.
And he needs to get a building permit, so to trigger everything else.
Got to get the permits,
Will do,
okay? Because that triggers this whole thing,
no problem.
okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
How does he make the carport not a structure?
Removes it,
Just unbolts
whatever it
it,
takes to
takes it
remove it.
down.
Is it bolted into the ground?
Huh?
Is it bolted in the carport?
Yeah. it's
Yeah,
like
it just unbolts
lag
it,
bolt.
takes it out.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night. Done?
Yes.
Have a nice evening.
Thank you, sir.
I want to talk about the approval of the 2000 annual report, 2018. Are we ready to proceed on that?
It's not listed.
He told me that you had it and that it's ready to go if we vote on it.
Yeah, I coded it. I just forgot. I didn't notice it wasn't on the.
We don't need it on the agenda as long as everybody comes. Okay, we're gonna have to, we won't do nothing with that.
Just tell them when to do it. Why don't we do that?
In reference the 2018 annual report from John Barry, we are going to hold it over until next meeting when John Barry is here. We have no memorializations and nothing else pending. We did get a confirmation from Mr. Sachs that the CVS application will be heard on December 11th at 7:30 p.m. Has everyone had a chance to, or on December, okay. Joan passed out the meeting agenda for 2020. Everyone has a chance to look it over, and we'll discuss that at the next meeting. Has everyone had the opportunity to look over the minutes of August 28th, 2019? If so, I need a motion to reject or approve those minutes. Minutes are approved for August the 28th. Make a motion to adjourn.
So moved. So moved.
Meeting's adjourned.
Maybe the week before. So, the November 24th is Tuesday, Thursday's Thanksgiving. So we're gonna have the same issue we had this week with CVS. So let's move it to a different week, like make it the 17th of the year. What about the 18th? I mean, is there another, what about the 17th?
Previous Tuesday.
Oh, right.
It's every year.
Yeah, you're right.
Can't do it.
Yeah, we'll leave it if we have to cancel it, we cancel it. No one wants to have it.
This year, you had a big application. So it's not
She's
usually an
saying
issue.
that the week before is the league,
Right. So I just
so
don't
we can't do it.
And the other Wednesdays are planning board meetings. So that's why that's usually when we do that.
How about Thursday then? Oh, that's still the league. Yeah, the week is usually the league.
Sometimes you have an extra week. You can do it on the 5th, this time you don't.
Yeah, it would be too close to October.
Right, yeah, so you know.
Yeah, then we just live with it. So,
And then you deal with it as you go.
yeah, yeah.